Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Warton. This podcast is all about our journey into the woods of ourselves, getting to know who we are, and where we're going in life so that we can create the life that we want to live. It's about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. It's also about mindset. Our beliefs are such an important part of this journey, and there are so many ways for us to change our mindset so that we can more easily live a life of expansive joy. This podcast is also about going literally into the woods and spending time in nature, and how that can help us on our own personal journey of self-knowledge. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now let's get into this week's episode. Hello, adventurers, and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 423. This is your host, Holly Warton, and I'm back with another exciting guest. Today, I'm talking with Lois Wagner about how her outdoor adventures have taught her resilience and how they helped her to overcome adversity and challenges in other areas of her life. Lois is a keen hiker, scuba diver, and camper. Her life has been full of both adventures and misadventures, all of which have taught her resilience. She was washed out to sea while scuba diving and was rescued by a fishing trawler. She fell and cut her head open while hiking. She drifted 5 kilometers off the parachute drop zone. She rolled a snowmobile. She fell off a dog sled. Did any of this stop her? No. She continued her outdoor adventures and solo travel around the world. And in this episode, we talk about what your outdoor adventures can teach you about resilience and how they can help you to grow your resilience muscle. So who is Lois? Lois Wagner is your friend for forgiveness and freedom, helping you move from victim to survivor to thriver and beyond to freedom after facing a life or business challenge or adversity. Lois lost a business and went bankrupt. She was attacked, raped, and left for dead. She was forced into retirement and experienced many other challenges. These include many mishaps and accidents on her travels and during her outdoor adventures. Her work is based on these personal major adversities and life experiences. Lois learned to forgive. She forgave the rapist and the business partner who betrayed her, and to move on to a more rewarding and fulfilling life. Lois guides you to build your resilience and grit, to develop a growth mindset, to energize your mojo, and to learn to forgive. This is achieved via one-to-one coaching, group masterminds, and keynote presentations. Lois's book, Walking Without Skin, A Journey of Healing from Fear to Forgiveness to Freedom, is part memoir and part self-help guide. And she has a TED Talk on the topic as well. She's developed a program for boys and men and girls and women called BRAVE, B-R-A-V-E, designed to stop toxic behaviors and eradicate gender-based and domestic violence. Lois is a South African businesswoman with extensive local and international speaking, human resource, training, business management, project management, marketing consulting, and leadership coaching experience. So what are you going to learn in today's episode? We talk about how to be more of a risk taker in adventures and in life. We discuss what Lois's misadventures have taught her about resilience. We talk about how to learn from difficult situations, what her adventures taught her about how to overcome adversity and challenges in life. We discuss how outdoor adventures can help us to heal from trauma. And finally, Lois's fantastic trip for forgiveness. She has this great idea that I don't know why I didn't think of this before, but I really, really love it. Forgiveness is something that we've talked about before on the podcast, and it can be really, really challenging. And Lois has a really great tip on how to exercise your forgiveness muscle. So I hope you enjoy today's episode. Hello, Lois. How are you doing today?
Hi, Holly. I'm doing great. Thank you. And you?
Good. I'm really looking forward to hearing about all of your adventures because you've done a wide variety of things.
I've done a few.
So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Right. I am South African.
Yeah.
I tell people to smile with me, and I use the acronym SMILE to describe what I do. So I'm a speaker and storyteller. So I do public speaking, and got a TEDx talk, and I'm a published author. That's the S. The M is I'm a mentor. The I is hopefully I'm inspiring. The L is I'm a learning facilitator. I train. And the E is an empowering coach. So that's what I do. And what I do mostly is I help people move from being a victim after some challenge or adversity or change to become a survivor, then a thriver, and then finally to find freedom. So I help people be free.
I like that. I think that freedom is one of the highest values of most of my closest friends and a lot of the people in my life. So I think that's definitely something that is important to a lot of us.
Absolutely. It's essential.
Yes, it is. It is. Having that lack of freedom is just absolutely horrible. I've been in places in my life where I did not feel freedom, and it was just soul-crushing.
And of course, with this current pandemic,
Yes.
we don't feel the freedom either.
Yes, it's a bit rough still. So, Lois, what are your favorite outdoor adventures?
Scuba diving, hiking, and camping.
I have done all three of those things. So, how did you get into scuba diving?
You know, it's such an interesting story because I was an invalid, if you like, as a child. I was diagnosed at a very young age as having a heart problem.
Oh.
And so I was never allowed to do anything. I was this little child who sort of watched everybody else have all the fun. And so I grew up. I did play a little bit of netball at school, but everybody was very concerned about me when I played. So I didn't do much at all. And I was in my 40s when I met a man who was a scuba diving instructor, and he was just a friend. But I was self-employed and I had a lot of free time. So I used to often go and just watch him when he did his training for his students. And he always used to say, come on, come and dive. And I've never swum, and I don't know how to swim. So I said, no, I'm not. I'll just sit and watch, have a beer. I'll watch you teach them. And then one day he persuaded me into the swimming pool. So I was terrified. I put the mask on. I felt claustrophobic. I got out the pool and I said, no, that's not for me. And then a week later he said, come on, try again. And eventually, after a lot of patience on his side, became a diver.
Diving. I learned how to scuba dive when I was living in Los Angeles many, many years ago. And my university offered a scuba diving certification. And because it was at a university, they really took like the science part seriously and the physics of compression and decompression and all that. But it just completely took me outside of my comfort zone. And I was a bit scared of water. I knew how to swim, but it wasn't something that I ever really got into. So it was a huge leap out of my comfort zone and into this whole new world. Because I think until you've done it, you have no idea what it's like to be in this world of underwater stuff. I mean, there's fish and there's corals and there's rocks and there's so much going on under there. And it's like, you're a part of it, swimming through it. It's just, I'm getting the chills as I say this to you because it's unlike anything else. You really are going into a new world.
It is sheer magic.
And are you still a scuba diver? Is that something that you continue to do?
Well, no. Lots of reasons why not. But at the moment can't fit into a wetsuit.
Wetsuits are really difficult to get out at any size, age, range. They're tough.
Yeah, I left South Africa. I dived in Cape Town, and Cape Town has very, very icy cold water. And they say Cape Town divers are well respected around the world because we put up with anything because the water is so cold and the visibility is so poor in Cape Town. So when I left Cape Town, I went to the Middle East where there's beautiful diving. And now I'm back in Johannesburg and I'm nowhere near the sea. So that is the real reason I can't get to a dive site at the moment.
So what about hiking? How did you get into hiking?
That was also by accident. One of my diving buddies kept saying, come and hike, come and hike. And again, remember, I've never done anything physical in my entire life. So I said, don't be silly, I'm not going to climb mountains. But I joined them socially. It was an incredibly wonderful social hiking club. it was often called the hiking club with a drinking problem.
No.
They used to have these lovely social evenings, and I would go along to these social evenings, and I just enjoyed the people so much. And I was fit. I was gym fit. And they said to me, come and hike. So one Sunday I joined them. I had no idea what was going to happen or where we were going. It was a miserable, cold, rainy day. And we basically ran up Table Mountain, couldn't see where we were going. I was so terrified because I thought I would fall down the side of a cliff because you couldn't see.
Yeah.
We ran up that mountain and ran down that mountain, and I couldn't walk for 2 days afterwards. And lo and behold, the following Sunday, there I was, meeting them all at Table Mountain again. And what was so interesting about our second hike was that it was also way beyond my level of capability. And we went on a hike called Silver Stream, and there's ledges, and you had to scramble up and down these ledges, and I just couldn't do it. And one man said to me, well, stand on my head. We had to climb down from one ledge to another. He said, stand on my head and I'll lower you down, which I did. Well, that man, he never came back to the club after that.
He was like, this is too hard. I can't.
But I was hooked.
Yeah.
And Cape Town is so beautiful with that beautiful Table Mountain overlooking the sea on all sides. And I would hike one Sunday and I'd look at the people down in the sea and I'd say, oh, why aren't I diving? So the next weekend I would dive, and then I would look up at the mountain and say, oh, why aren't I hiking?
Oh, I love it. I love it because they're both very different experiences. In one, you're going underwater, and the other, you're going above sea level or above whatever level you're at. And what about camping? How did you get into camping?
Well, it came with the hiking, really, because, we did lots of overnight trails and long trails that involved camping.
Yeah. So
you got really strong and fit because you had to carry tents and to carry all the equipment on these multi-day trails. So the love of camping came with that.
I love camping. It's something that I've been craving now, and I've booked some dates in the calendar for September because I haven't been able to go on a camping trip for a while. I've been camping a little bit throughout the year, but I needed like a trip on my own to go camping, and just really helps me to slow down and just release that stress.
It is. It's lovely. And to wake up in the morning and you put on the coffee to brew, and it's just to watch the stars where they're not polluted by all the lights in the city. It's fabulous.
Yeah, it's lovely. So in addition to your outdoor adventures, you've had a lot of misadventure in your life. So you were washed out to sea while scuba diving and rescued by a fishing trawler. You fell and cut open your head while hiking. You drifted 5 kilometers off a parachute drop zone. You rolled a snowmobile. You fell off a dog sled. What has all of this taught you about life and resilience? And what have you learned from all this? Like, you just keep going. You keep doing stuff.
Well, I think I learned that I'm a real risk taker.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't step out of my comfort zone. I think I live outside of my comfort zone. And I'm willing to try anything once, whatever it is, whether it's food or drink or travel. I'm willing to try anything once. It's created a sense of adventure in me.
Yeah.
And in terms of travel, I traveled to countries like Iran and Iraq and Haiti and Pakistan, and places where most people don't go. And I tend to travel alone as well. And I think that has just come from this risk-taking.
Sorry, do you think you're a natural risk taker, or where does this come from?
I don't know where it comes from. I look back at my childhood. I was a naughty girl. I broke some rules, but I wasn't really a risk taker. So I think maybe it just came in my 40s when I discovered more to life.
Yeah, absolutely. So would you have any advice for someone who's maybe listening to this and they're thinking, oh, that sounds terrifying. I don't think if I got washed out to sea, I don't think I'd survive. I wouldn't know what to do. Like, how can you encourage people to maybe take a little bit of risk in their own lives?
It's just do it. if you don't try, you'll never know.
Yeah.
And so, just don't be afraid. Find somebody who can hold your hand. That will certainly help if you find somebody who's just there to guide and mentor you and talk you through things when you get stuck. And I think I was on a trail once and we got lost. We took the wrong turn. And I literally got stuck on the side of the mountain, and my partner had to go and leave me there while he went searching for another route.
Oh.
And if he hadn't been there, I might still be on the side of that mountain.
Yeah.
So if you've got somebody there who can just guide you through it and help you. I think when I was washed out to sea, my buddy and I, she was terrified.
Yeah.
Well, I was terrified as well. But because she was terrified, it calmed me down. And I could calm her down.
Yeah.
So again, just having the buddy, having the somebody there who you can share it with, do it with, experience it with, it makes it so much easier and more fun, I think.
Yeah. You're also into solo travel, as am I. So if you are alone on these adventures, do you just rely on yourself? How do you get through things?
Well, solo travel for me is so different to sport or outdoor activity, because when you're traveling solo, you have to mix with the locals. You have to talk to them. You have to share with them. Otherwise, you get lonely. Whereas if you're traveling with a friend, you tend to share everything with your friend, and you don't really immerse yourself in the cultural experience. And so I've done a lot of travel with friends and a couple of tours. But at the end of the day, the solo travel just makes you connect with the locals. It makes you really experience it as a local rather than as a tourist.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what have all these adventures and misadventures and travel, what has all this taught you about resilience?
Well, it's given me resilience.
Yeah.
I have a quote that I use quite often, and it just says, pick yourself up, dust yourself down, laugh, forgive yourself, and continue with renewed determination and vigor.
Yeah. Do you feel resilience is like a muscle, like kind of the more you exercise it, the more it gets easier?
Definitely, you can, and it's something you learn. It's not inherited. It's definitely something you can develop over time. And as you say, the more you experience hardship or difficulties or challenges, the more resilient you become.
Yeah, absolutely. And what have your adventures taught you about how to overcome adversity and challenges in your life?
The first thing is to just acknowledge that you've had an adversity. Too often we say, just brush it under the table, that bad thing happened. I was washed out to sea. Oh, well, it happened. And you try and move on and forget it. And that is the wrong thing to do immediately. Immediately, one should just examine it and say, okay, how did it make me feel? It made me afraid. It made me angry. It made me sad. It made me hate myself. It made me hate somebody else. Whatever it is, acknowledge those experiences and those feelings and work through those feelings. How did the feelings serve you? Often after something bad has happened, you deny it and say, okay, and that doesn't help. But in the short term, it might help because you have to process things. So you need to deny it for a while you're getting over the hurt. And then you've got to say, well, okay, now I've got to deal with that emotion and I've got to let that emotion go. So I like to work with people saying, well, let's experience that emotion. How does it feel? How does it look? How does it smell? How does it taste? And use all the senses. It really understand that emotion or feeling and then say, well, now we don't want that feeling anymore. What do we want? And then place it, we visualize a better place, a better feeling, a better emotion to replace it with. Then you can start moving on.
Yeah, I think that's really important. As you said, I think it's so easy to just sweep it under the rug. You want to get it over with. Let's just move on. But the after effects linger if you do that.
So, and for me, what happens then, once you've dealt with those emotions, once you've said, okay, now instead of feeling angry, I'm feeling calm, whatever it is. And now what do you want to do? Now you want to develop that resilience and say, what can I do with this? How can I improve my situation based on what happened? And you start moving forward with resilience to become a survivor of that situation. So I survived being washed out to sea. I survived it. I kissed very many greasy, smelly fishermen that day. They hooked me up the side of the fishing trawler. So it's saying, okay, now where's that taken me? How have I learned? What have I done with that? And I learned that always have one of those balloon things. I forget the name of it, that you tie to your wrist, that you inflate when you are lost at sea so that people can find you. So what are the lessons? The lessons about your weight belt. Should you or should you not drop your weight belt when you're in trouble? So you start learning lessons from your experience.
Yes.
And you develop a benefit mindset where you say, okay, or a growth mindset where I've now improved and developed and grown from my experience.
I think that's so important because I think a lot of people are afraid of misadventures. They're afraid of making mistakes. They're afraid of failure. They're afraid of stuff going wrong. But when we reframe them as a learning opportunity, as lessons that we can apply later in life to make the rest of our life better, like it just completely changes the perspective of misadventures.
And they become funny stories.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Once you've gotten over the trauma, you can tell the funny story of how you got washed out to sea.
And then, of course, you become, after the growth mindset, the learning mindset, you then get the benefit mindset. And that is where you say, well, how can I help other people not have that experience?
Yes.
How can I help them overcome the same situation? So you start sharing your stories and sharing your learning with others to help them overcome their problems.
I love that. And I think that's really an important part of the journey. I write books as well. I've written 4 books on my walking adventures. I walk long distance trails here in England. And when I finished the first trail, my first thought was, I have to write a book to tell people all the mistakes I made so that they can avoid them. And what I would do differently next time, and just to help people have an easier time of it and help people to like get out there and enjoy it more than I did on my first time, because I loved it, but it was also really, really hard. So teaching important.
I used to suffer terribly with blisters.
Oh.
And I went to a podiatrist once and I said, I just can't cope with this hiking anymore with these blisters. I've got very, very high insteps and it makes shoes very difficult to find. And he said, rub soap onto your foot, then put your socks on, then rub soap onto your sock, and then put your boot on. And I never got blisters after that.
Wow.
And I thought he was going to charge me a fortune on insteps and build-ups and all kinds of things for my shoes. And that solved my problem. And so that is also a lesson that I learned and a lesson that I share with other people who suffer the same problem. So, there's so much you can learn from other people as well.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so important for us to tell our stories and to talk about our adventures and our misadventures, because we learn from hearing ourselves tell our own stories, but we can also help other people.
And I'm very stubborn. So one time when I tripped and fell and I cut my head open, it was quite funny because there were 2 people on the trail who had just completed a first aid course that specialized in head wounds. And they were saying, oh, we've just finished our first aid. I'm thinking, I don't care. Stop telling everybody. Pick me up and fix me. I was obviously very woozy and we still had a long way to walk, and somebody offered to carry my backpack. And it was a heavy backpack, and I'm so stubborn. No, I will carry my own backpack. And what I did do, though, I conceded and I took a hiking stick from somebody because I was a bit wobbly. And fantastic thing about that was I never walk without a hiking stick again. I just found them so useful. They're just amazing. And, at first you sort of thought people who are walking with hiking stick are not good hikers. They need a stick, don't they trust their own legs? But since that day, I've always walked with sticks. And when I hiked, I did a 10-day trek in Nepal. I hiked with 2 sticks, and that was just fabulous.
Yeah, I always hike with walking poles. It makes such a difference. If you trip, you can catch yourself. It helps you get into that rhythm of walking. It helps you get uphill. It helps you get downhill. Like, it's just a total game changer.
You can rescue your hat when it blows into the trees.
Yes. Yeah, when I first started walking here in England, I always would see people with poles and I would think, why are they walking with poles? They're not old. They're not like, why? What's the thing? And then I got poles and I was like, this is a whole new level of hiking. So, Lois, you've experienced trauma in your life. So have I, and I know definitely some listeners have. How can outdoor adventures help us to heal from trauma?
Oh, just to be in nature, just to immerse yourself in the beautiful surroundings, especially trees, and go hug a tree.
Yeah.
It really does. Hugging a tree is a fabulous thing to do. But nature's calming, it's relaxing. I think even in the occasion when you're diving and then the sea's rough and the waves are big, you might have an adrenaline rush and you might be a bit afraid at the moment. But it does take your mind off your trauma. And you can't think about all those negative things while you're facing some kind of a challenge. So it's the calming aspect. It just makes you one with nature, one with the universe, one with others. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I like what you said. It really keeps you in the present. When you're hiking, when you're diving, you've got to be in the present moment, focused on what you're doing. Your mind can't drift to, oh, that horrible thing that happened, or, oh, what am I going to do about this? Like, you can't be in worry mode. You've got to be like, I'm doing this thing. What's going on?
I have to get to the top of that mountain.
Yes.
One step at a time.
Yes. And would you say that, we were talking earlier about how outdoors adventures have taught you resilience, and I absolutely agree with that. I think that can also help with trauma healing. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think the stronger we feel and the more resilient we feel, I think that really can help healing.
Definitely. My situation was I was raped. I was viciously raped and I was injured. And I became an activist. And I rushed out there trying to change the world instead of taking a step back and saying, look after me first.
Yeah. Yeah.
And looking after me first is very important. And that involves, I couldn't scuba dive after I was attacked. I was stabbed in my ear and I couldn't equalize after that. So it took me a long time before I could get back into the water. And the hiking as well took a back seat. So I focused on changing the world rather than on just healing. And so I went straight into resilience. I went straight into that fix things rather than fix myself first.
Yeah.
Carry on.
At what point did you shift and realize I need to focus on healing myself?
Well, it was a journey. It was actually a 2-year journey. I lost the business. I was attacked in my place of work. And then my business partner betrayed me a few months afterwards because I didn't want to work there anymore. I wanted him to buy me out. And instead of buying me out, he put the business into liquidation and I lost everything. And so I had to not only get myself physically right again, I had to get myself a job and I had to start all over again. And at the same time, I was this activist. And so my focus was everywhere except on me.
Yeah.
And everybody was so, Lois, you're so strong, you're so brave, you're so proud, you're so brave and strong, we're so proud of you. And I suppose it went a little bit to my head, oh, look at me, I'm so brave and strong and proud. And 2 years later, I couldn't get out of bed. My back and legs just didn't want to work. And scans and x-rays and what have you. I had a back operation. It failed. I had a second back operation. It also failed. I was bedridden for 6 months until it was pointed out to me that it was psychosomatic. Because I'd been so brave and so strong, I hadn't dealt with those emotions. And now, by being bedridden, look at me, I'm so weak. I need you, help me, I'm so pathetic. And so I had time to reflect on those emotions. And so I reflected on those emotions and I did some mental healing work. And I went for 8 chiropractic treatments. The surgeon had told me that I would never scuba dive or hike again because I could never carry the weight on my back. And I did some work on my mind, the 8 chiropractic treatments. And I did a 5-day hiking trail with a 29-kilogram backpack on my back.
Wow. And did you ever go back to the surgeon and say, look what I've done?
No, I didn't.
I feel like they need to hear stories of people recovering and doing remarkable things.
I should have.
Yeah. So, what is adventure like in your life today? What adventures are you experiencing?
Getting out of the house.
Yeah, I know. It's hard these days.
Yeah, so I've had no physical adventures since I returned to South Africa 2 years ago from the Middle East. And I've had no adventures in the past 2 years. Looking forward to starting up again.
Yeah, yeah. I've done a lot of reading about other people's adventures, and especially when we were in lockdown here in England, I would just buy all these books about other people's hiking and other people's long distance trails and all that stuff because it was like I needed to live vicariously through someone else since I was stuck at home for so long.
A Facebook friend of mine posted the other day that she had gone shopping and she said, oh, there's nothing as exciting as shopping in an outdoor shop. And she had bought a backpack and some hiking poles. And I looked at it and I thought, oh, I don't want to go.
Oh, hopefully things will start returning to normal. We are, I guess, little by little. So, Lois, tell us about your book. You have a book called Walking Without Skin. What's that about?
Well, it's my journey of healing, and the subtitle is From Fear to Forgiveness to Freedom. So it takes me from that fear when I was attacked and how I journeyed through my healing process until I forgave the rapist. I went to the prison and I forgave him. And that is just something, the whole forgiveness, it's not in the book, but it's something to share now. To forgive yourself and to forgive others. Even, you think of your outdoor activities. Forgive myself for making that mistake when I got washed out to sea. It was my mistake. My diving buddy, it was her first qualified dive. And I was an experienced diver, and I should have known better than to let her lead the way. So I needed to forgive myself for that. I need to forgive myself for the silly mistakes I made on hikes when I fell and tripped and hurt myself, for rolling that snowmobile. So learning to forgive yourself, people just say, it happened, get over it. Yeah. But it's more than that. You need to forgive. You need to say, I made a mistake. I forgive myself for it. Or you created the accident. You swerved in front of me. I need to forgive you for doing that. Yep. And so forgiveness really is the step that takes you to that freedom.
I think that's really, really important. And that's something that a lot of people really struggle with. Not just forgiving other people, but forgiving themselves is sometimes even harder.
It is. I hated, first of all, the rapist. And I drank too much. And then I hated myself for drinking too much. And so hatred is a terrible emotion, and to forgive yourself for that is not that easy.
I agree. How can people open up to the possibility of forgiveness? How can people learn to forgive? How do you forgive? It's very intangible. It's not like you can be like, I say these words and then the forgiveness ceremony has happened. What are your suggestions?
Well, like resilience, it's a muscle. So you practice it. You practice it every day. And I suggest people keep a forgiveness journal. Everyone keeps gratitude journals these days. Yeah. Keep a forgiveness journal. I forgive my dog for eating my slipper. I forgive the husband for not bringing the milk home. I forgive my friend for forgetting to phone me on my birthday. You practice those little forgivenesses that appear insignificant and that you don't think need forgiveness. And just practicing, and yourself as well, 3 things every day. I forgive myself for pushing the snooze button. I forgive myself for shouting at the dog when he ate my slipper. You just look for those little things until it becomes a habit. And then eventually, as with me, you don't need to forgive anymore, because the minute it happens, you are forgiving. The minute somebody does something that's wrong or hurts you, or you make that mistake, you immediately say, oops, okay, I forgive myself, and you move on.
I really, really like that. As you said, so many people are doing gratitude journals, but I've never even thought about the concept of a forgiveness journal, but I can absolutely see how that helps build the muscle.
Definitely. And as I say, with me, it's so natural now. I don't even have to think about it.
Yeah, I
It
love
took
that.
it took a while. It didn't come just like that.
Yeah.
It took search and a bit of effort. Got a 12-step guide on how to learn to forgive.
I like that. So can you tell us any other tips about forgiveness since it's...
Well, writing, you say you write. Writing is
Yeah.
so therapeutic anyway.
Yeah.
And just write your feelings, write why you're angry, write and express those feelings. Express them. If you're angry, express that anger, not at the person, but get a dartboard and a picture of the person and throw darts at them.
That's a good tip.
Express that anger, because while you're angry or upset with somebody, you can't forgive them because you're angry. And how can you forgive when you're angry? You have to move on from that emotion before you can forgive.
Yeah.
And as I say, with me now, the anger, it comes and goes almost instantly. So the forgiveness is so easy.
Yeah. Oh, I really, really love that tip. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, Lois, where can people find you online and learn more about what you do?
Walking Without Skin. It's the name of the book, it's the name of my web page, and it's the name of my Facebook page.
That's easy enough. I will link to your book in the show notes, and I will link to everything else so people can find you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'd love to hear more about your walking.
Oh, yes. Well, we can talk about that in a minute. Thank you again. And thank you for your fantastic tips. I really, really enjoyed our conversation. And I think listeners have something really useful to take away from this.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to meeting somebody on a mountain or under the sea.
Yes. Thank you again. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I think it's useful to stop and think about your life experiences, your adventures, your misadventures. What have you learned from them, and how have they made you into the person you are today? I think that's a really good question for reflection, something maybe you could journal on. And if you'd like to share that with me, please let me know. You can drop me a line, let me know what you thought of this week's episode and what you've learned from your own adventures and misadventures. You can email me at holly@hollywarton.com or find me online and get in touch. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. It would mean the world to me. Remember to visit hollywarton.com/423 for the show notes and links on this episode. Finally, happy trails to you. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Warton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollywarton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Warton. That's patreon.com/Holly Warton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.